The old world is now crumbling, and the new world is emerging in its place. Where is the new world emerging? It's emerging in you. Part of creating authentic power, part of moving toward love, is always becoming aware of what energy is active in you in the moment. And in the Earth School, that's always love or fear. And when it's fear, bingo, you've just discovered a temptation. What are you going to do about it? Temptation is integral to creating authentic power. Without it, how can you choose between love and fear? Every preview of an action, of a deed, of words that will create painful consequences in your life, offering you the opportunity to choose otherwise, offering you the opportunity to put your attention into a loving part of your personality and act from that. Can you see how powerful temptation is in the creation of authentic power? And it's all for your benefit. In the last podcast, we talked about something that was startling to me when I learned about it. So you might say, well, how'd you learn about what you learned about? That's going to be the subject of another podcast. We're going to talk about intuition. We're going to talk about non-physical teachers. We're going to talk about guides. We're going to talk about sources of wisdom and compassion and intelligence that are real, but not physical. These are all aspects of the new consciousness that we're acquiring, multisensory consciousness. And these discoveries, or things that I learned, were as startling to me. In the last podcast, we talked about temptation as a good thing. Temptation as a dress rehearsal for a negative karmic event. Temptation is a way for you to see what a frightened part of your personality is planning to do and will do if you don't intervene, if you don't choose otherwise. And it will be something that will create painful consequences for you, because it's a frightened part of your personality that's planning this, that's showing it to you in exquisite detail. And we talked about evil, not as a thing that you can resist, that you can do jujitsu or taekwondo and defend yourself against. It's an absence. It's an absence of light, an absence of love. How can you defend yourself against an absence? How can you punish it? How can you contain it? Put it in a penitentiary? Lock it up? Give it an orange jumpsuit? No, you can't do any of that to an absence. The only thing you can do to change an absence, the only thing you can bring to an absence to change it is a presence. And the only way that you can bring something different to an absence of light, an absence of love, is light, is love. That's authentic power, aligning your personality with your soul. So that's what we talked about, temptation. Not as something that's created outside of you and that you've got to look outside of you to contain, but something that is a product of a fantasy, a vision, of a frightened part of your personality. And in order to prevent the negative consequences that it's envisioning, you've got to choose, make a responsible choice not to act on it. And this was the remarkable, dramatic discovery that is not mine alone. All of us are acquiring multisensory perception. We are in the midst of an unprecedented, epic transformation of human consciousness. And it's underway. It's not coming. It was coming when I first wrote about it. Not anymore. It's here. And we can see it around us. We can see it in the collapse of our social structures. We can see it in the collapse of civility, as it's called in the United States. We can see it in the failure. We can see it in the collapse of our entire world, in fact. And so it's easy to say, uh-oh, this is a problem. No, this is not a problem. This is a symptom of a transformation. The old world is now crumbling, and the new world is emerging in its place. Where is the new world emerging? It's emerging in you. And that's where to look for it. And that's where you'll find it. And we'll talk about all of these things and continue to talk about them on this podcast. But right now, I'd like to talk about temptation again for a few more minutes. We talked about temptation as a good thing, as a constructive thing to be aware of, not to act on, of course. That's the only thing you might say that the new understanding of temptation has in common with the old understanding of temptation. If you act on it, you'll create painful consequences for yourself. So, how does that apply to your everyday life? Is it every day that someone's planning on embezzling or committing adultery or committing a murder? No, of course not. But what about creating authentic power? That requires becoming aware of frightened parts of your personality, the very parts that will create a temptation. Parts that are angry, jealous, resentful, inferior and needing to please, or superior and feeling entitled. Well, they present their own pictures of what you should do when you're angry. And you're not aware that it's coming from a frightened part of your personality. You simply act on your anger. I know about this. I did it for half my life. And I knew I was angry. It didn't come as a surprise. I even told people about it. Yeah, I'm angry. I'm an angry person. Put that in your pipe and smoke it. So I was proud of my anger. But I didn't think about it. I didn't say, what's my intention in the fact that I'm about to engage in rage? I just did it. I felt it and I did it. Same thing. I felt jealousy and I was jealous. Felt frightened and I was frightened. That was the old consciousness, limited to the five senses, understanding power as manipulation and control. And the new consciousness is alignment of the personality with the soul. And how do you do that? You become aware of all of the parts of your personality that prevent you from aligning with your soul. That's another way of saying you become aware of all of the parts of your personality that prevent you from loving. And those are the ones I just mentioned: fear, anger, jealousy, resentment, competitiveness. And the soul that you want to align yourself with, as you begin to see what that brings into your life, are the loving parts that I just mentioned also, or I did in the last podcast. Here they are: gratitude, appreciation, contentment, patience, awe of the universe. When you align yourself with these energies, with these experiences, you are aligning yourself with your soul. You are aligning yourself with love. You are aligning yourself with light, capital L, capital L. And that is the presence that you can bring to the absence that is evil. So in other words, what's the difference between a temptation to commit adultery, to commit murder, to embezzle, and the impulse, a temptation to shout, to lash out in rage, or to withdraw in jealousy, or to disdain people and dismiss them because this frightened part of yours that's active now feels superior, or to try to please them because the frightened part that's active feels inferior. There is no difference. Every time you consciously locate a frightened part of your personality, you are in a temptation. And consciously locating every frightened part of your personality is exactly what you're doing as you create authentic power. So, this means that temptation is not reserved for, so to speak, the upper echelon temptations of high moral condemnation. It is every temptation, which means every preview of an action, of a deed, of words that will create painful consequences in your life, offering you the opportunity to choose otherwise, offering you the opportunity to put your attention into a loving part of your personality and act from that before you speak or before you bring a deed into being. Temptation is integral to creating authentic power. Without it, how can you choose between love and fear? As in, there's no choice. In the Earth School, there's always a choice between love and fear. There is always a duality with its opposite: big, little, smart, not so smart, intellectual, artistic, athletic, night, day. This is a characteristic of the Earth School. It's a domain of time, space, and matter, as well as duality and fear. And none of those exist outside of the Earth School. But we're in the Earth School. Why? Because we volunteered. Not we. There are billions of souls, of personalities, of incarnations on this planet that are wishing they were not here, that are living lives of suffering and starvation and brutality and humiliation and pain. Why are these things in the world? Because we put them there. Who else did? We'll come back to this on other podcasts, but as you begin to answer that question yourself, you're already in new terrain. And the new terrain is, what is your responsibility for what you see around you? It's great. It's significant. It's more than significant. It's everything. So now let's return to looking at temptation as a part of creating authentic power. It is your intention to become aware of all of the parts of your personality when you decide that you want to move toward love in your life, because moving toward love can only be done in one way. You've got to find and move beyond the control of every part of your personality that prevents you from loving. Every part of your personality that prevents you from giving the gifts that you were born to give, because that's where your joy comes from, and your fulfillment and your meaning and purpose. That means that part of creating authentic power, part of moving toward love, is always becoming aware of what energy is active in you in the moment. And in the Earth School, that's always love or fear. And when it's fear, bingo, you've just discovered a temptation. What are you going to do about it? The temptation to tell your boss, I quit. I'm tired of working with you. You can't even be worked with. You're not smart enough to be a boss. Or to shout at a child or your beloved. Anything that a frightened part of your personality demands to do, and you become aware of it before you do it, that's a temptation. And that's a good thing, because that gives you the opportunity to choose differently. As you create authentic power, you come to realize with the new consciousness, you do realize that when you're angry, for example, that's not coming from the unchangeable ground of your being like I thought it was for so long in me. It's coming from one part of your personality, and you've got a lot of parts. Some of them originating in fear, and some originating in love. And as you create authentic power, you learn how to cultivate those that originate in love. Those are already aligned with your soul. And you learn how to challenge those that are not, the frightened parts. And that's what we're talking about now. Moving beyond the control of a frightened part of your personality requires the new consciousness. It requires, when you're angry or jealous or resentful, stepping back, putting an arm's length of distance between you and that part so you can recognize it for what it is. And that distance allows you to do what you could not do before. Choose consciously. And what you are choosing is not to act on that temptation. Can you see how powerful temptation is in the creation of authentic power? And creating authentic power is our new evolutionary requirement. We are no longer a 5-sensory species that evolves by surviving, and that survives by pursuing external power, by manipulating and controlling. We are a multisensory species, and we evolve by growing spiritually. And we grow spiritually by creating authentic power. That's our pathway now. That's our only pathway now. We are becoming loving. But we're not loving. But we are loving. Well, what does that mean? It means that you, who you are, your soul, is a powerful and creative, compassionate and loving. And loving and loving and loving. That's an important word. And loving spirit. But your personality has both loving and frightened parts. This is why you are in the Earth School, to distinguish between these two parts. The Earth School is a fundamental step in spiritual growth. It is the arena in which we learn the most fundamental of all requirements: choice. How to use it, how to experiment with it. You are a chooser. I won't even say that's your power. It's not something you have, it's something you are. You are a powerful and creative, compassionate and loving spirit. You cannot stop choosing. You cannot choose to stop choosing. That's a choice. You choose and choose and choose continually through your time in the Earth School. From the time you could consciously choose as an incarnation until the release of your incarnation when your soul returns home to non-physical reality. And what you are choosing is love or fear. This is an intention, by the way. It's the same way as saying love and fear are the basic intentions, the fundamental intentions, the fundamental mutually balancing energies in the Earth School and mutually exclusive. When you're in love, there's no fear. And when you're in the control of a frightened part of your personality, there's no love. Distinguishing between love and fear and learning to choose love no matter what's happening inside of you, such as anger, resentment, jealousy, mania, hopelessness, suicidal thoughts, or what's happening outside of you, such as another 9/11 type event, or a natural catastrophe, such as a tsunami, earthquake, tornado, hurricane, and choosing love no matter what in all those situations and in every situation. Authentic power is learning how to move through your experiences with an empowered heart without attachment to the outcome. You can't do that without learning to recognize and become very familiar with the frightened parts of your personality. And in doing so, you become very aware of what they want before you act on them. That's the temptation. That's how big temptation is in our evolution. If anyone should ever ask you, what is the nature of transformation? What is the nature of self-transformation? What is the nature of spiritual growth? The answer to all three is the same: the dynamic of temptation. Now, what are you going to do with this information? You can discard it. You can say, no, temptation is an evil. It's a product of the devil. And anything that has to do with temptation is evil and it's bad. You can choose anything you want. That's the point. You are a chooser. Will you consider, for example, any of the things that I've suggested? That's the decision you must make. Are you going to experiment with anything that I've suggested? That's a choice you must make. Are you going to follow anything you've been told all your life by a parent, a peer, a priest, a psychologist? That's a decision you must make. This awareness comes with the new consciousness. The old consciousness will tell you, I don't have a choice. This is the way things are. And if I don't agree with it, I'm fantasizing. I'm in an illusion. I'm ill. That's what a psychiatrist might tell you. Depends on what you're thinking. If you're thinking that you need to challenge the frightened parts of your personality before you can love, that's healthy. If you're enjoying anything you're hearing on this podcast, subscribe to it. Now, what do I mean by enjoy? Do I mean, is it entertaining for you? Does it make you laugh? Does it make you forget your worries? That's not what I mean. I mean, do you resonate with anything that I say as relevant, profound, and pertinent for you, not for the world, for you? Something that you can use, something that you can experiment with in your life. If you do, if you resonate, then subscribe, because there's more where this comes from. It comes from the universe, as do you. So I have a soul step for you. Now, you've got a lot of writing in that little notebook. Maybe you better replace it with another little notebook and a sharper pencil, or a little ballpoint pen that's got a refill in it. Because now I want to ask you to write down, no, I don't want to ask you. I'm asking you. In fact, I'm suggesting to you, take that little journal and write in it every time you become aware of a frightened part of your personality. Every time you feel jealous, every time you're angry, every time you want to withdraw, every time you want to command or submit, write it down. Write it down and write everything about it that you're going to do if you decide to let this frightened part of your personality act for you and create your consequences. Because that, my dear spiritual partner, is a temptation. And it's all for your benefit. You don't have to pay attention to it. You can act on it, and you'll experience the consequences. And the consequences will be painful or blissful, but they won't be a reward or a punishment. There is no such thing. There are your choices of intention and the consequences they create. There is cause and there is effect. You are always the cause. It is your choice of intention before you speak or act, love or fear. And there are always consequences, and you always experience them. Changing your intention is simply changing the consequences that you choose to create. It's that simple. It's not mysterious. Try it. That's your soul step for this coming week. I'm looking forward to being with you again. Enjoy yourself. I'm Gary Zukav.